Okay. Hi. I was wondering how difficult it would be to just kind of start my first little live stream. I'm not expecting anyone to join at this moment, but at some point when you do, let this be the preparation for many things that I want to share and do and collaborate. But I'll call this Mind Log 1. Just going to kind of do my own little uh, going inward with you guys, reading a poem, talking about an idea, and I'll stream out and start hopefully creating this motion for really getting my work out there. And as I put in my about me, I'm a waker shaker in the sense that I think we all come into this life, experience this life. We're all trying to find what that is. Everybody has a reason for it. And for me, I was thinking about it today that our focus on superpowers and the Marvel characters and the hero is too much of a stark contrast for our paradigm in the sense of needing a hero and being a victim. And so much of the narrative of our human stories of history is this divide and conquer, this categorizing. It's been a philosophical industry. Something switched in the human consciousness, particularly affecting a certain subspecies of the human race, which was the the Anglo-European traditions, if you will. And that slight shift in their consciousness could have just been a blight from the environment, or we're a young race. I don't really know, so we had to make some profound fuck-ups. I don't know. But as I speak to you guys more about this kind of spiritual realm I call Lambi, I hope to, in a way, draw you into the story of my personal life, the kind of sphere of focus, a world I've been creating, a world that I've kind of held to me. I first touched base with this world through books. That was my protective sphere growing up as a child here. But I had this thought that I made in my IG that one way to look at us coming into this world is, in a way, is to see not this life and the next life as something that's like from another dimension, even though it that is one way to describe this other world as a dimension, but to realize that this life and the next life, which has always been the dream space, we technically die when we leave this body. We have a small little concentration of breath that exists in our body and charges our body, but the profound presence of us actually goes into the dream world. But I'm sure a lot of people have dreams, and sometimes dreams seem unorderly and weird. Other people, it has profound synchronicities. And I think that's my point, is that when we fuse our conscious reality, our day-to-day life with the dream world, with that death realm that we place it. Because I think gradually there is that hype, we're all trying to live this life. It's our once of a lifetime thing. And I've never really liked that narrative. I never really liked, this is the only life you have, so live it to your best, I like that. But if we can draw in a focus, which I feel indigenous people's already been doing this for thousands upon thousands of years, even my ancestors, was drawing this connection to a story. And I think in this realm, our bodies did live longer because we summarized the waking state with the dream, with the death, and it was all together. It was all the same place. And especially when we're living on the surface of this planet, if we see it three-dimensionally, materially, yes, we come up to the surface to live in one form, but the form of the reality we see today is just the shadow box. It's just the shadowy form or edge of what the actual spiritual realm or the real realm looks like. And this has always been kind of a thing that I felt that when we go back to a primal time, we'll find that we had no notion of race. At that time, it was more we were taking each other by our word, and we were all connected by a memory, a vibration, a tone that was what I call the mother channel. And so we all belong to this kind of mother colony. And don't get me started about Earth being a spaceship and us being far older than we are, but to kind of just open up that idea of drawing, or that vibration of drawing you into what I've been cooking up for over 10 years. And I'm going to treat it in my own rhythm and share it a bit of it at a time. And sometimes I'll just hang out with you and share how I hang out with myself. Let me put a charger on this. Well, that's what happens to me when I get a little ticked off. I knock my fan over. Prerequisite. I've had probably about 3 years of group therapy experience, meaning I've taken a lot of time to just listen to myself, to listen to the voices in our head. Let's be honest, we all have the voices in our head. Sometimes they sound like us, or they're just kind of images or vibrations. But I in the last 3 or 4 years, I spent a lot of time trying to understand where my reactions come from. Where do the triggers, the little trauma things, certain repetition of words or language. I have a very debilitating narrative structure growing up as a kid without a really much of a father figure. I mean, just those certain scenarios have all affected me naturally. And moving from one environment a lot to the next, being very kind of nomadic in the sense of moving different households. You know, growing up as children, the world is much larger. But anyway, so I have my own story, and then that story has now blended in with this world I call Lambi. Being predominantly a poet, I went to college for just mostly European and English poetry. We studied a lot of world literature too, but of course, I went off the deep end, and just have been, everything from esoteric to occult to creation stories. I have a very wide range that I love and admire, and I treat it with utter respect. And being a writer myself, a poet and a novelist, I'm working on a story that's leading to the story called Lambi. How I've been blending my personal life with this, I guess in some people's mind, imaginary. I think we need to reacquaint ourselves with what imaginary is versus fantasy. Imaginary is a function in our human mind in which we can create the realities we wish. But that's hijacked on a socialistic, national, corporate level. It's a cancerous level. And that's hijacked our mind and prevented us from creating our own personal myth stories that can help us coexist and live much closer with Mama Earth. But these structures are wanting us, these language structures are asking us to go to Mars and let's go get out of this planet because everything is being destroyed. Motherfuckers, don't get me started on this global warming kind of narrative. I really think that language is what's causing everything. The more we agree on what is being said through the news channels, different media sources, newspaper agencies, anything that kind of has money backing it, we need to step back and go back to our own rhythms and our own kind of choice of research, if you will, choice of delving in, whether that's with a tradition of your own. For me, it's been poetries and stories. But anyway, I just want to share this, how my world has been blending with this world named Lambi, and also just to share poetry and just how these energies and ideas just kind of flow through me on a day-to-day basis in my room all alone. I wanted to kind of introduce this with a poem by Destiny Birdsong in her collection Negotiations. Please find this. But this poem is called Hypervigilance. At night, I peel off my skin and hang it inside my closet door. I like the feel of walking around without questions. Sometimes I stand over the pots on the stove, let the heat seep through the breastbone like a bomb. Sometimes I sit in front of the box fan and sing into the stream of air. My voice splinters, comes back to me as a chorus. Sometimes I fly short distances, like from the first floor landing to the foot of the stairs. I like the way air feels on the exposed flexors in my feet. It reminds me there are many ways to getting free. When I'm done, I crawl into bed. My thoughts billow like open tints against the sky, its luminous grain. Into this he walks like a husband returning from the fields. But we never talk about the fields. He begins by recounting my day, naming each stuttered word, each moment I held open my hand, awaiting the grasp of another. He cups my face with its lidless eyes and shudders, tells me never to have children. He slips into my skin suit, performs a pantomime. He laughs about my secrets, remembers my child blood names, which he grinds into the air with his peppered tongue. The flakes fall against my houseless flesh. In the morning, I must return to my skin. Beneath it, I will burn until it is night. What comes to mind for this is the immediate disembodiment, dissolution, disorientation, disassociation of our presence with our body, or the distance between us and our body, being grounded in our body. We operate on survival codes, survival mechanisms, survival habits that kind of keep us to a level of disembodiment from our body because we don't want to experience the pain that was done to us. And any trial by fire of knowing, whatever you want to call it, shadow work and embracing the self, embracing the pain in which you have been inflicted, is to transmute that into a transformative force. There is this strange function in us, and I think all poets know this, as Destiny Birdsong shows, is this ability to super empathize. As a poet, we can write from the position of a root, of a flower, of a fly, of somebody else. But equal to that ability, we can confuse, misinterpret, and impose ideas, ideologies, egos, perspectives on other people. This is why it's very highly debatable today when we speak in the literary realm. Is it possible for an Anglo-American like me, whatever you want to call me, template, I can't write from the position of anyone else outside of my own race. But if you're a good writer, if you read enough, and for me also poetry, and acquaint yourself enough with the voice, you can act from that state and communicate through it. But I bring this up as a tone in poetry, and especially from this poem, how she takes off her skin and she lives seemingly carefreely as a spirit, as a presence within her own body. But as she has shown in her poetry, as being a victim of rape and having that pain inflicted, this kind of psychosis in which we try to escape our body, to step away from the body pain by living through patterns or experiences, or keep perpetuating certain habit or certain people in our life that inflicts that same pain on us. It's a complicated entanglement we're in. But that's part of that transition, I guess, of that transmutation from here to that spirit body. And this is what poetry forges that light in us to continue to blend, to fuse in with the dream realm, the real realm, and not this kind of shadow box theater we're living in right now. But this kind of disembodiment is something I see within my own experience too, from my own pain inflicted, from my own contraption of an environment I was in growing up, Catholic, in a lower middle class environment. Any of that kind of matrix we lived in had an effect on us psychologically, which was my trial by fire. And oftentimes what I love about this is that I do feel constantly disembodied from my body. Having diseases inflicted on me, and some violence, that causes different triggers in me. And I also disembody from my body. It's happened a lot in my family, a lot of drinkers, and that's a perfect way to just, reduce yourself to just the bare bones and just lie there in a sludge of utter vacuum, a vacuum of yourself. We humans can either be a vacuum or like a transformer. I want to be a transformer. And that transformation is a constant thing. You're not just enlightened, you are enlightening. Once you start the charge will lead you. Thank goodness there's greater intelligence. Thank goodness there's a bigger hand here in place. Thank goodness that how this world has been wheeling about has not always actually been on our hand, even though it looks like we're manipulating. I think our total disconnect right now with the planet, especially in the terms of the colonial elite mind, is that they think they have control over this Gaian matrix of this body. This Earth is a serpent. I often imagine this Earth is not like how they show it in physics. It's a writhing snake, a toroidal force of serpentine energy. And the energy is so strong, the actual surface of the planet congeals, sticks to it because of the magnetic intensity of her. It's much stronger than the sun's. The sun is kind of antecedent to it. We put a lot of emphasis on the sun. But I think the sun is its own consciousness and it can exist on its own. That's another realm I'll get into at some point, but I think that Earth is largely a very capable body of her own, a self-regenerating, highly intelligent hive mind, mother goddess, mama, who speaks through us. And this is what's been kind of leading me to this, because I've often, this kind of came out of I guess I wouldn't say it was a conversation, but I had a friend of mine on Instagram. She posts a lot of stuff that I really like, but I always kind of get Gemini about it and send a big message and send a link or two. And it's hard to form like communications with people just through texting. So we just haven't had that chance. But she was sending me links about telluric lines, ley lines across the planet, and how churches and cathedrals are built upon these particular telluric lines. And I remember reading up about kind of they're called menhirs, menhirs, menhirs. I think they're more of Celtic origin, a Celtic technology, if you will, where they built kind of foundation stones, transformer centers around the planet where particular junctions of high grid energy, earth energy, moves. And it moves like a vein work, a root work. I mean, remember, everything you see in nature is a reflection of what is real. So our veins, our neurological system is mimetic already to roots and mycelium patterns. So we're, and I often ask this, what do humans actually, what do we really look like? I mean, if we're going to go back, what do we actually really look like? And outside of the philosophical, psychological framework we look, particularly through these eyes, because these eyes need they're kind of like little telescopes to see into this realm. But when we close our eyes, we're inside. We're inside Earth. Therefore, we can traverse any time. So how do we operate from an inner eye as well, and to be always in tune to her? Because we're so connected to her like flash drives, Mama Earth like flash drives into her. How can we discern and modulate the information that comes onto us so it's conducive, congruent to what is needed in the environment to change it? In this function that is highly overlooked, we just see it as the voice. The very resonance in your chest is the culmination of all elements. You have air, and then you have heat and fire, which is essentially the density of vibration, which is creating the tone, which is also it's passion. It's an intended energy that vocalizes the energy and starts shaping it. Then you have water, which is the actual divine imprint. I mean, that's where we receive all of the memories and ideas, is from the molecular water element, or as an element. But then you have earth. I mean, we're a mineral structure, so everything is essentially we're tuning forks. We're all aligned to that, but we're way out of whack based upon propaganda and visualized entrapments and narratives. But this is why I kind of like to just operate in this realm and just throw it all at you, and why I go to the poets and the storytellers and the indigenous traditions, to reacquaint myself with another, not another way, but my way of I guess, returning myself to the original story, to the world that is this earth. But what sparked out of that, see, I go on these little detours for a second, but coming back to what my friend said on IG in the message, she was showing me the Telluric lines connect to like the Stonehenge and other cathedrals, and so then I mentioned the menhirs. But I think Christian organizations, the Jesuits, the Templars, whatever they were called over the years, because there was a massive amount of psyop activity in the Middle Ages. Just that Enlightenment era in general, they infiltrated the world and tried to hijack all these original secrets that days before pre-Diluvian, before the flood. I mean, there's remarkable civilizations. There was a remarkable civilization here in the Americas before the colonists even trickled in. And of course, every academic's going to be mad that Columbus was not the first Anglo that came here. America has been interacted with for millenniums. I like to wager from the hollow earth theory perspective is that certain landscapes are not available to certain people because of, in a way, sea level and the way Earth moves. And when you think about tectonic plate activity, it's kind of nice to imagine that maybe America, certain parts of America were accessed more on a subterranean level, and it changes over time. And that's maybe America came up out of the surface of the water and was living within the earth. It came up. I like these ideas of inner earth civilizations and how the surface of the planet undergoes these cycles of different, I guess, family groups, new human life forms to come onto the surface, to live. I don't know. I don't know how you would look at it. I look at it as just one continuous story. I'm all about one, like I said earlier, to focus in the waking state, the dream state, and the death state. By not making them into segments like science usually does, but just to sum it up, like this is the real world, okay? And to fuse all of them together so that when it is time to leave this bodysuit, we can have a more conscious focus of what is available to that next threshold, if you will. And I think in a way, the way we see this lifetime is that we're forging a soul. We forge from our essence a kind of craft or a sphere, a spaceship, a new body in which we can inhabit and continue downstream. The feeling of that's there's no cap off. Things just don't die. It's regenerative. And this is so primal about this kind of anthropocentric theory, in a sense, is yes, I think humans did traverse space, but I think space needs to be relooked at as probably a giant subterranean cavernous system as well. And a holographic one at that. But Earth is fine. It's fine to see Earth as the center in a way, because it's the ultimate analog in which our human experience can still cohabitate. And I think that when we were really tuned in, we definitely lived in the body much longer. And so we can kind of experience the balance, not the balance, but just the spirit world with the shadow world, the physical world. But at some point that time, I think we'll blend in with it again. And that's kind of where I'm going in my stories, and this idea of Lambi in this realm is to reacquaint ourselves with this original coeval memory and to step out of this colonial scientific narrative going into space. Like I said, I think there was a time when Mars and Earth and the moon maybe were a different shape, or connected together. Some of the theories of Velikovsky that the planet was born out of the Saturn, which Saturn was originally a sun, and Earth was born out of it, and how that aligns with certain myth theories. But regardless, I think there is a connection to the motion of the cosmos with the planet and the cycles that we experience as a civilization on here. How I visualize it as a storyteller is that we're allotted, I guess, a certain amount of time on this surface, on the surface of the planet. But in largely that's just because of a certain duration of, let's say, of inhabitation with a sun or a power source. I think that we already have the ultimate powers. We have a star within the Earth, and it's the self-made fire of like our consciousness, all of human ancestry and nature of Earth, of Gaia, Sophia's soul herself. All the memories of the universe is contained in our realm. We have it. It's here. But we're, like I said, we're diffracted. Our perspective is diffracted. The light of that focus is diffracted onto entertainment, on the entertainment complex, in a certain science fiction narrative that the elites are trying to manifest. But it's much harder than that. The storyteller in me, maybe their memories are not, but plenty of talk about living on the moon and Mars. I'm all about that. But I think that that's as far as humans needed to go, because I think that there was a point in time these planetary structures, these celestial structures, like the Earth and the moon, fuse together at certain points of time and create a certain kind of cosmic craft to essentially to transition into another realm or dimension. And she does that as a persistence of her spirit for all of us, for the life function to live, the eternity of this. Instead of seeing it as just this duration of time with the sun, I like to see that Mars and the moon and Earth were kind of a superconducting force and could travel away into another realm and then operate from within a new constellation. And there maybe has new relationships. Who knows? But these are just things that I explore, not hypothetically, but just as carefree, to really acquaint ourselves with really anything that could be true. I think for all of us, we really want something profound. We want to feel connected to something large. No matter what background you are, we all want to have our home back, that sense of home that we belong to. That's not socialistic or nationalistic or religious-based, race-based. It's a memory that we all resonate with. But anyway, this kind of, I think I'll probably shut it off at this point. I listen to podcasts all the time that are like an hour long with conversations with other people. But I notice I can have good curve offs about a half hour, just kind of give you an idea how I flow. But I'm just rolling with those ideas, as I said, with my friend on Instagram, that these menhirs, foundation stones all across the world, were not like staples, but conducting pins on the planet that kept her flesh, her body intact in a way, energetically. And I think that's an original intelligence that was our function as humans. In Genesis, we were the shepherds of the earth, and that, in a way, that means we are facilitators. Thank God we don't have to have the ultra intelligence to supersede the motion of the cosmos, of the wild, more chaotic forces that we live in. That there's a greater hand, and maybe humans, what would we look like if we communed and eased back the thrusters on this vision of ours, and to truly come back to each other and Earth, and also to decolonize our minds from this scientific, categorical-based reality perspective, to not see things in parts, but to see things in relationship to each other. And if you shut off on nationalistic, socialistic, news-based narrative, humans are going to find their own trickling into certain language connections, certain groups in which we can start creating the realities we wish. Architecture, I think, is a necessary part to this conversation, changing homes back to a more geometric, energy-based knowledge of creating a structure that is conducive to the surface of the planet. Instead of trying to build these heavy blocks over these energy grids, we get empaths and highly tuned light people, people who are in tune to the grids, to position architecture on these grid zones in order to officiate the etheric energy and to clean the air around us. I don't think it's necessary to have churches. I think churches have hijacked a lot of these grids I've been very skeptical about, and for my own Christian tradition, because a lot of hype today in the well, not conspiracy realm, but the New Age realm, is that these cathedrals are, built upon these energy grids, and they were ascension chambers, as Hancock talks about. I like that idea, but I think churches are really the first. Um, was a Churches foresaw computer technology, the mosques. I think that they foresaw the technology because in those chambers, in those structures, they not only harness the energy, but harness the sound and frequency. And for me, I think it's kind of hijacked. I think that as it's necessary for us as humans in order to live as organically and in tune with Mama Gaia, we must resort to going back to more geometric, organic patterns of construction on this world. Just studying the patterns in water and in soil. Let's try to build buildings based upon the molecular level and see how we can, building with different material like mushrooms, or building within stones or something like that instead of the heavy rudimentary houses we build on. We could probably recirculate our consciousness and our psychology into a different kind of analog. And that facilitation of this energy would return us to this memory more and help us to coexist with this and continue on, because we are in a rapidly receding course of action, but this is more of a free fall from this kind of reptilian elite. I'll just call it reptilian because it's based upon that part of the brain that is about competition, greed, and survival. And I think it's a parasitic force that's lived among us for a very long time. Call them what you may, the destroyers. I don't know, but we're exuding them from our consciousness. And so maybe in a way it's that energy is just kind of running off in me right now because I feel we're returning to this Lambi. We're returning to a mother home. But anyway, I guess I'll just leave it at that. That's kind of take one of how I roll here. And I'll definitely be a little bit more structured with podcasts coming up. I want to definitely do some tate-to-tates, some conversations with people that I meet. And I want to read excerpts from my novel, from my poetry, and further poetry of my shelves. As you can see, I have a lot of books that I read. So I'll leave it at that. But until next time. Okay. I don't know what I just did. But I'll leave it there. Let's edit. It's funny. I'm still doing the live and I'm editing. See, this is how much of a newbie I am. Oh my gosh. Let me just get off it. I'm just hoping it goes to my YouTube page. So I'll just leave it at that.